Jai Gurudev, and thank you for joining us today. Today we have with us an art of living expert and an officer of the Vedic Dharma Sansthan. Today we are going to discuss about Trust VVMVP, the Ved Vigyan Mahavidya Preet, and how it was established on 13th of November 1981 and its journey so far. So let's begin. So could you please provide the origin story of VVMVP and how and why it was formed in 1981 under the Art of Living umbrella? Anyway, thank you for joining us today. So, for to begin, it is noteworthy that the Ved Vigyan Mahavidyapeeth, the VVMVP, was constituted in November 1981 under the aegis of the Art of Living as a registered public charitable trust devoted to spiritual, educational, cultural, and social developmental activities. The impetus for forming the VVMVP came from His Holiness Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankar Ji's vision. The true transformation arises not only via personal inner growth but also through structured service to society in education, rural upliftment, women empowerment, and preservation of ancient wisdom. The trust was created as the institutional vehicle through which the service projects of Art of Living could be given a structural basis in India. Now, would you like to add more from the perspective of the trust's early years? Indeed, in the early 1980s, when the art of living movement was growing, there was an understanding that service must go hand in hand with spirituality. The formation of VVMVP created that platform, a legal entity under which the many charitable and educational initiatives could be managed, scaled, and sustained. The trust anchored the idea that service or seva or selfless service is an integral dimension of spiritual practice. Over the decade, the VVMVP has become the umbrella organization for many of the service projects of Art of Living in India, including rural development, free schooling, women's skill development, and Vedic research. Now, what was the significance of the founding trustees you mentioned, in particular the role of the Chief Justice Bhagwati and the Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer? Yeah, thank you. While the publicly available VVMVP sources do not name every founding trustee in detail on the website, the oral history inside the Art of Living tradition holds that eminent jurists such as Chief Justice P.N. Bhagwati and Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer graciously lent their support as founding trustees, which carried tremendous symbolic and practical significance. Their association provided credibility, legal integrity, and moral authority to the trust at a time when new spiritual service organizations were emerging in India. Their backgrounds, one a deeply spiritual Bhagwati and the other avowedly atheist, the Krishna Iyer, reflect the openness and inclusivity of Gurudev's vision that service transcends belief labels. Exactly. The fact that such luminaries from the Indian judiciary agreed to become trustees sent a powerful message. This was not just a sectarian spiritual venture, but a broad based service movement rooted in universal human values. It also reinforced that VVMVP would operate with transparency, legality, and social responsibility. The trustees' commitment to moral legitimacy allowed the trust to function effectively in education, rural service, and research. How did His Holiness Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankar Ji's vision and leadership guide the formation and functioning of the trust from the start? Gurudev's vision has always been holistic personal growth plus service, wellness plus societal fulfillment. When he founded the Art of Living in 1981, he emphasized the twin pillars of joyful living and the art of giving. In establishing the VVMVP, he provided the blueprint, build an organization where spiritual practices of yoga, pranayama, meditation supports the social service of education, rural development, and where ancient wisdom of the Vedas, the Upanishads meets contemporary challenge. His leadership ensured that service was not an afterthought but essential to the organization's identity. From the trust's perspective, Gurudev's leadership continues to guide strategy, ethos, and culture. He emphasized that the trust should function like a volunteer based movement with integrity, minimal bureaucracy, and maximum heart. Over the years, he has repeatedly reminded trustees and volunteers that seva or selfless service is not charity in the traditional sense, it's a spiritual process, uplifting both giver and receiver. That philosophy continues to shape the trust's programs and operations. Now, can you describe the primary functional domains of VVMVP and how they were conceptualized? Yeah, the VVMVP functions across several primary domains: education for underprivileged, women empowerment and skill development, rural development and infrastructure support, Vedic and social research, and support for Art of Living's inner wellness programs such as the happiness programs, the silence retreat, and etc. For example, providing free education, uniforms, books, transport, and midday meals for rural children is one concrete expression. The idea from the beginning was that upliftment must be holistic. You serve the body, mind, and spirit together to expand. The education domain was envisioned not just for literacy but for value based holistic formation, life skills, emotional resilience, and inner clarity. Women's empowerment was not just about jobs but about awakening self confidence, economic independence, and dignity. Similarly, rural development was conceived as creating sustainable, self reliant communities, not mere short term fixes. Research in Vedic sciences and social welfare was conceptualized as bridging spiritual wisdom and modern academic inquiry. This too sets the VVMVP apart. Now, how does the VVMVP integrate the inner wellness programs of the Art of Living with its service projects? The integration is at the heart of the trust's methodology. The Art of Living's core programs, such as the Stress Elimination Happiness Program, Breathwork of Sudarshan Kriya, Meditation, Sahat Samadhi programs, and yoga, equip individuals with inner resilience, clarity, and joy. Then, through VVMVP service projects, those individuals, the teachers, the volunteers, the alumni, extend that inner transformation outward into the world in terms of education, service, community building. In other words, the same person who learns to manage stress and Awaken Presence is prepared to serve in rural schools, women's skill centers, or Vedic research. From the operational side, once the inner program participant feels empowered, the VVMVP provides structured channels for seva or selfless service, whether as a teacher in a free school, mentor for women's self-help group, or facilitator of life skills in rural areas. The trust monitors such linkages, ensuring that inner growth and outer service feed each other. This cyclical model ensures sustainability, empowered individuals to serve. Their service generates new stories and motivation for the next batch of inner program participants. Now, what are some key milestones in the Trust's journey since 1981? One key milestone is the rapid expansion for educational programs, the VVMVP free schools, and value based education initiatives across many states. Another is the launch of women empowerment skill centers in rural India, helping thousands of women gain livelihood skills. Additionally, the growth of Vedic research and publication of academic service programs under the Trust's umbrella is significant. The fact that VVMVP became the umbrella under which many of the Art of Living service projects in India operate is itself a milestone. Also noteworthy is the deepening global footprint. While VVMVP is India based, its model of service plus inner wellness has inspired a similar service trust under the Art of Living internationally. On the symbolic side, the annual Foundation Day, the 13th of November, is celebrated to recall the trust's formation with gratitude. Jayadurv, now could you describe the governance structure of VVMVP, how trustees, volunteers, and staff collaborate? The governance model is worth noting for its blend of structure and volunteer ethos. According to the broader Art of Living documents, the organization operates with a board of trustees with a term of 2 years and an advisory board. Two-thirds of trustees change every 2 years, enabling fresh perspectives at VVMVP. The board sets overall strategic direction, approves the major programs, ensures accountability, and upholds the trust's values. At the operational level, the VVMVP functions with a core team of paid staff, education experts, administrators, and a large base of volunteers drawn from the Art of Living teacher community and alumni. Volunteers implement service projects in schools and rural areas. The synergy between staff and volunteers allows efficient scaling without heavy overheads. Importantly, the trust emphasizes transparency and auditing. All funds are tracked, external audits happen, and reports are made available. The idea is service is a calling, not a profit motive. Now, how does the VVMVP fund its programs? What are the revenue or donation streams, and how is fiscal integrity maintained? The funding architecture is multi-layered: donations from well-wishers, patrons, and alumni, income from certain fee-based courses under Art of Living, which channel part of proceeds into service projects, corporate partnerships, and CSR funding, occasional government grants for rural infrastructure or education projects. The trust ensures that all donations are used for charitable purposes and not for private gain. From the broader Art of Living context, the organization emphasizes that no trustee receives personal benefit beyond legitimate expense reimbursement. The governance document states no other benefit accrues to trustees at VVMBP. We maintain external audits, annual reports, and transparent accounting. The aim is to create trust with donors and ensure that service impact is the focus, not overheads. Now, in terms of education, how many schools or programs has VVMPP launched, and what is the profit profile of beneficiaries? Jagdeep, while I cannot provide an exhaustive list right now, the VVMVP since its inception has launched free schools and value-based educational programs across rural India, especially in socio-economically backward areas, the tribal regions, and underprivileged children. The profile of beneficiaries, children from impoverished homes, are often first-generation learners. They receive free tuition, books, uniforms, transportation, and midday meals. The educational model is holistic beyond academic content. The life skills, the emotional resilience, meditation, and ethics are woven in. The aim is that students not only pass exams but become aware, resilient, and service oriented citizens. Many alumni of these schools go on to do higher education, jobs, and even volunteer work. The impact is both academic and transformative. Jagadish, so now could you share a specific case study or a story of how the BBMVP education initiative changed a child's life? Jagadish, at one rural school under VVMVP, a girl from a very poor family, mother, a daily wage laborer, joined at a grade 1. She received a free tuition, meals, and mentorship. Over years, her self confidence grew. Thanks to the life skills workshop led by the art of living teachers integrated into the school, she learned to manage stress, speak in public, help peers. Eventually, she topped her class in secondary school, gained admission to a college with scholarship, and now works as a teacher in the same region, thereby breaking the cycle of poverty and becoming a role model. Now, the underlying theme when you combine academic support plus psychological inner wellness support plus mentorship, the child doesn't just survive but thrives. That is the VVMVP formula in education. We serve children and awaken them. The ripple effect is seen when they uplift their families and communities. Now, regarding women's empowerment, how has VVMVP approached this domain, and what have been the outcomes? The Women Empowered domain in VVMVP was conceptualized as a twofold strategy: skill development, vocational training, livelihood support, plus inner growth, confidence building, leadership, yoga, meditation. The trust works with self help groups, SHGs, rural artisans, women in villages who previously had limited opportunity. Practically, the VVMVP has established centers where women learn tailoring, handicrafts, computer skills, agriculture related livelihood. At the same time, they participate in life skills and stress management programs drawn from art of living tools. Outcomes: many women have started many enterprises, small enterprises, become the primary income earners in their families, gain decision making power at home and in the community, and serve as mentors for others. One outcome metric is reduction in child marriage in certain project villages, increases in girls' school attendance as mothers become more empowered. Now, how does the Rural Development Project under VVMVP function, and what sustainability model is used? In rural development, the VVMVP envisages villages as ecosystems of education, livelihood, infrastructure, and consciousness. The steps include identifying backward villages, conducting baseline surveys of income, literacy, infrastructure, and health, implementing projects, sustainable agriculture training, rainwater harvesting, women SHG, school upgradation, and health camps, ongoing mentoring, and community led governance. The sustainability model emphasizes community ownership. Once the village takes charge, the VVMPP moves to next village. Yes, another important aspect is integration of inner wellness so that villagers shift from just surviving to thriving, less stress, more cooperation, stronger local governance. The aim is not only to build physical infrastructure, but to awaken the underlying human capacity. Over time, many villages demonstrate self sufficiency, improved incomes, greater education, health outcomes improve, environmental resilience increases. Now, Jagadish, so could you talk about the Vedic research and social research dimension of VVMVP and why it matters? And this dimension is what differentiates VVMVP from typical service NGOs. The trust not only implements programs but also engages in researching Vedic wisdom, Upanishadic tradition, ancient India's knowledge systems, and tries to integrate them with modern sciences of psychology, education, and wellness. The belief is ancient wisdom is rich and relevant for today's challenges: stress, fragmentation, and purpose crisis. On the social research side, the VVMVP analyzes the impact of its programs. Example: what is stress level reduction among children participating in value based schooling? Outcomes of women's empowerment, rural development metrics. This research informs scalable models, publications, partnerships with academic institutions. This VVMVP serves as a bridge between spirituality, service, and scholarship. Now, what is the notion of seva or selfless service, and how is it embedded into the trust's culture and operations? The culture of seva is central from the time of formation. Gurudev emphasized that true service is not charity but an expression of inner fullness. When you serve, you are really sharing the joy you have discovered. Volunteers do not serve for recognition but because they feel and live the shift within. This mindset is built through regular volunteer training, mentorship, integration with the art of living programs. On the operations side, volunteers engage in schools, rural projects, skill centers, sometimes traveling on holidays or weekends. They are inducted into the trust as a those of transparency, simplicity, and commitment. The trust emphasizes humility, gratitude, and long term engagement rather than one off's acts. In practical terms, this means minimal hierarchical distance between volunteers and leadership. Many programs are volunteer run with staff facilitating overtime. This culture has created a sense of belonging, purpose, and sustainable impact. Now, how has the VVMVP measured its impact over the decades, and what are the some key metrics? The measuring impact is such a multi-dimensional trust is in a, such a multidimensional trust is challenging. However, VVMVP uses a combination of quantitative and qualitative metrics. Quantitative are number of children enrolled in free schools, number of women placed or self-employed, number of villages covered under rural projects, or number of research papers published, number of service volunteers engaged, and qualitative is change in stress levels, community resilience, social cohesion, and student confidence. For example, the website mentions that the VVMVP has been working for many years and is the umbrella organization under which the Art of Living service projects in India operate. The trust also monitors stories of transformation, children who go from rural hardship to higher education, women who move from dependency to entrepreneurship, villages that develop robust social structures. These narratives are as important as numbers. Impact measurement also guides which programs to scale or refine. Now, what have been some of the challenges VVMVP has faced over its journey and how were they addressed? There have been several challenges. Firstly, scaling fast without losing quality and volunteer spirit. When demand in rural areas grows, maintaining consistent training, monitoring mentorship is complex. Funding and sustainability, while many projects are donor funded, ensuring steady resources is always a concern. Integrating ancient wisdom with the modern academic frameworks, balancing tradition and contemporary relevance, cultural and social resistance in some villages. Change initiatives can face inertia or lack of community buying in. Addressing these for scaling, VVMVP introduced robust volunteer training, local leadership development, standardized operating procedures, while preserving flexibility for funding. A diversified model of donations, course fees, and CSR was developed for wisdom integration, research partnerships, and training of teachers in both Vedic and contemporary frameworks were established for social resistance. Extensive community engagement, trust building, and demonstration projects were run to show results. The motto is go slowly where needed, deeply rather than superficially. Now, how does the trust ensure that service projects maintain spiritual integrity and do not become purely transactional? That's a good question. The risk for any service organization is that programs become delivery based and lose the deeper transformational dimension. At VVMVP, we ensure spiritual integrity by embedding mindfulness, meditation, and life skills into service education and rural programs. Before volunteers enter a project, they often undergo art of living courses like the happiness program to align inner purpose. Operationally, we also monitor, are the children in schools only getting books and exams, or are they also developing resilience, clarity, and purpose? Are women only getting technical skills, or also empowerment and dignity? The service projects have built in reflection sessions, volunteer debriefs, the inner growth components. The leadership regularly revisits the question, are we doing service or are we empowering? That keeps the trust's work rooted, not just mechanical. Now, in your view, how has the VVMVP contributed to the larger mission of the Art of Living movement? The VVMVP is the service engine of the Art of Living in India. The larger mission of Art of Living is to foster a stress free, violence free society, to enable personal transformation and societal transformation. While the core programs of art of living like breath, meditation, yoga address inner transformation, the VVMVP takes that energy outward into social transformation of schools, rural uplift, women's empowerment. Indeed, without VVMVP service projects, the art of living would remain primarily in inward transformation movement. The trust completes the circle, inner change leads to outer service. Outer service deepens the inner change. This synergy is what makes the movement impactful and credible. For many volunteers, working under VVMVP is the practical expression of what they learn on the mat or in the retreat. So, what role do volunteers and alumni of the Art of Living play in the Trust's work? Volunteers and alumni are the lifeblood of VVMVP. Many alumni of Art of Living courses feel inspired to contribute time, energy, and skills to the Trust's service projects. They become teachers in free schools, facilitators in skill centers, coordinators in rural programs. Their lived experience of the programs allows authenticity in service. From the Trust's viewpoint, we encourage alumni to adopt SEVA roles based on their strengths, teaching, mentoring, administration, and research. We provide regular training modules for them. We also encourage long term engagement rather than one off volunteering. Sustained involvement enables deeper impact and community bonding. Many of our leadership roles today are held by long term volunteers who began as Art of Living participants, then moved into VVMVP service. Now, how does a VVMVP collaborate with the government, academia, and other NGOs? The collaboration is critical to scaling and legitimizing the work. VVMVP has partnered with the government schools to upgrade infrastructure, with local administrators for rural water projects, with the universities for research and publication. On the NGO front, we collaborate for resource sharing, joint workshops, and peer learning. For example, in education or rural development programs, we often seek local government support, permissions, infrastructure, and community mobilization. On academic side, research outputs from VVMVP help in building evidence-based models which can be shared with universities or policy institutions. The aim is not to compete but to create synergy. The presence of founding trustees with high credibility of judiciary academia also helps at these collaborations. Now, how is the VVMVP campus at the Bangalore 21st kilometer Kanakpura Road organized, and what is its role? The Bangalore campus of Art of Living of the VVMPP, located at 21-kilometer Kanakpura Road, Udaipura, Karnataka, acts as the headquarters as well as residential and retreat center of the Trust's programs. It houses administrative offices, training spaces, retreat facilities, volunteer residences, school units, and research centers. The campus is more than bricks. It's a living ecosystem where learning, serving, and being the coincide. Volunteers come here for training, seminars, retreats. Children from free schools visit on field trips, rural project teams meet, research workshops happen. The setting is meant to inspire stillness and service. The location near Bengaluru allows access to urban infrastructure while being away from the bustle, ideal for focused work. Now, Jagadev, so could you describe how the life skills and value based education is different in VVMVP schools compared to standard schools? Yeah, no, absolutely. While standard schools are often focused on curriculum, exams, and results, the VVMVP schools emphasize value education, self awareness, emotional intelligence, stress management, and presence. In practical terms, children are introduced to voluntary meditation or breathing sessions, life skills workshops, peer learning, the service projects, and reflection sessions. The curriculum includes the academic subjects but is enriched with the inner growth components. The downstream effect is children are more confident, less anxious, better able to handle failures, better communicators, and more compassionate. The objective is not just to pass school, but to become world citizens with heart, clarity, and purpose. We find that over time, alumni of such schools not only succeed in exams, but also serve society. That is the real difference. Now, how does VVMVP maintain continuity and sustainability of its programs in remote or rural areas where infrastructure may be weak? In remote areas, we adopt a phased and relational approach. First, build a trust with the community, then pilot small interventions, maybe a skill center for women or after school for children. We train local youth as mentors, so the project is locally owned. Infrastructure is built gradually, multi-purpose center rather than single use, shared with community. Monitoring and follow-up happen via regular visits. Funding is designed to be lean and scalable. Reliance on local volunteers reduces costs, and modular training materials are used. For example, mobile teaching kits, remote mentoring via alumni, regional hubs. We also align with government schemes. So infrastructure gaps are bridged collaboratively. Sustainability comes from making the community stakeholder rather than just a beneficiary. So, how do you ensure quality of teacher training, volunteer training, and program implementation within the VVMVP? The quality assurance is central. We have standardized training modules for teachers in our free schools, not just on subject matter, but in pedagogy, student psychology, value education, meditation integration. Volunteers also undergo training in art of living programs, the happiness program, the teacher training program before service deployment. Implementation checklists, regular audits, periodic refresher workshops, peer learning networks, and feedback loops are used. Also, impact data is collected student attendance, performance, stress levels, and dropout rates, and used for quality improvement. Mentors supervise local centers, and there is continuous learning from best practice centers. To replicate this ensures we don't compromise quality as we scale. Now, Jagrudev, so could you elaborate on how the VVMVP handles research into Vedic wisdom and how that feeds into its service programs? The research into Vedic wisdom is handled via the Trust's dedicated research cells. These explore themes such as ancient India's knowledge of wellness, breath, subtle psychology, community, and nature, and how these can inform contemporary education, stress management, and rural sustainability. The research findings are then distilled into curriculum, teacher training, volunteer programs, and service design. For example, insights from Upanishads or yogic texts about stress, mind chatter, and inner harmony are adapted into life skills modules for children or women. This gives depth to our programs. They are not merely modern psychology, but have historic root. The integration of Vedic research with the modern service is one of VVMVP's distinctives. Now, how has the VVMVP responded to changes in the social and educational environment over the decades, like digitization, new government policies, and pandemic, etc.? Over the decades, the VVMVP has been adaptive. While digital learning became necessary, especially during COVID 19, we set up online modules for children, teachers, and volunteers. Though rural connectivity remained a challenge, we used the hybrid models, local facilitation, and offline materials. We aligned with the government policies on education, the right to education, Skill India, and leverage CSR funds accordingly. The pandemic was a big test. Schools closed, but we provided and pivoted to remote mentoring, WhatsApp groups, volunteer check ins, and food relief via rural centers. In education, we use blended learning, teacher training, or on digital pedagogies, and value education even in lockdown. The resilience of our system came from the strong volunteer network and prior culture of service. The trust also documented how stress levels rose in children and teachers and introduced remedial programs drawing from the art of living stress management tools. Now, how do you involve local leadership and community participation in the VVMVP's rural and educational programs? We believe that for sustainable change, local leadership must be integral. In the villages we serve, the local elders, the teachers, the women's group leaders, and youth are invited into the project design, planning, implementation. We hold community meetings, listen to priorities, co design interventions. This creates the ownership. For example, in a rural school upgrade project, the local parent teacher association, the PTA, is trained. Some local volunteers become facilitators. Women from the village run skill centers. Youth become mentors. The trust provides guidance, training, and resources, but the local community drives the day to day. This ensures that when VVMVP steps back, the project continues. We call this service with dignity rather than service with dependency. Now, what is the volunteer journey like for someone who wants to serve via VVMVP? Yeah, the volunteer journey typically begins with the individual participating in an art of living core program like the happiness program or a meditation course where they awaken inner clarity. They then express willingness to serve and are guided into the volunteer stream or VVMVP. This might involve teacher training, rural project orientation, skill center facilitation. After orientation, the volunteer is assigned a project, a school or a rural village or a women's center, paired with a mentor, given training and peer support network. They start contributing maybe part time weekends or full time for certain periods. Periodic reflection, peer learning, and feedback keeps the journey alive. Over time, they may take leadership roles, train other volunteers, mentor newcomers, or design new programs. The idea is service journey plus inner growth plus skill growth. Now, how does the VVMPP ensure that children in free schools also become value driven citizens and not merely academic achievers? The free school model emphasizes value driven education. From the outset, children are introduced not only to academic subjects but to life skills, meditation breaks, service projects, for example, helping in community or as peer tutors, reflection sessions, ethics discussion. Teachers are trained to encourage curiosity, empathy, respect, and service mindset. On assessment, we look less at rote learning and more at confidence, communication, teamwork, creativity. Students are encouraged to initiate community projects like cleanliness drives, tree planting, peer counseling, annual events emphasize character, not only marks. The trust believes that academic success is important, but what matters even more is the kind of person the child becomes, compassionate, aware, resilient, who can contribute to society. Jagurdev, so what are the future plans or growth strategies for VVMPP over the next decade? They're looking at VVMVP plans to scale existing models, deepen research integration, expand digital reach, strengthen leadership pipelines, and build new service hubs in underserved regions, especially in travel belts, Northeast India, and remote villages. We also intend to collaborate more with the global partners to bring the Indian wisdom service model worldwide. Strategically, we plan replicate high impact educational and rural models in more states, develop a service ecosystem where art of living alumni worldwide link to service projects in India as mentors and volunteers, invest more in research and documentation so models become replicable, harness technology for blended learning, volunteer coordination, and impact monitoring, deepen women's empowerment and rural livelihood programs to align with the SDG goals. The aim is to multiply impact while preserving depth and values. Jagdish, so in what way has the trust's link with the spiritual side of art of living, like meditation, yoga, and breath work, specifically influenced the service outcomes? The integration of spiritual tools has had tangible service outcomes. For instance, children in VVMVP free schools who also undergo simple life skills and meditation sessions show lower stress, higher attendance, less behavioral issues. Women in skill centers who practice pranayama and meditation often gain greater confidence, mental clarity, better business outcomes. Rural villages also engage in regular community meditation, feel more cohesive, less conflict, and more collaborative. Indeed, the distinction is many NGOs do service, few integrate inner growth events, service workers themselves are calmer, more present, and less reactive. The quality of service improves. The trust's culture of being the change ensures that the volunteer is not burnt out but sustained. This influence is intangible but real. The joy quotient, the clarity, and the capacity to connect deeply all improve the service outcomes. Yeah, so could you reflect on how the founding trustees ethos continues to guide the VVMVP today? The founding trustees, including the judicial luminaries, set a tone of integrity, openness, and universality. The spirit is alive today. The VVMVP remains the non sectarian, inclusive, focused on humanitarian service rather than identity politics. The trustees' ethos of moral courage, service with dignity, and combining tradition with modernity continues to echo in the trust's culture. Practically, we reference their ethos whenever we design programs. Are we upholding legal ethical standards? Are we transparent? Are we inclusive of all beliefs and backgrounds? Are we bridging ancient wisdom and modern need? Their legacy gives us anchor for volunteers and trustees of today. The example of such founding figures inspires long term commitment, not a short term activism. Now, how does the VVMVP maintain alignment between multiple service projects like education, rural, women, research so that they don't operate in silos? Yeah, the coordination is key. VVMVP's headquarters organizes cross-domain communities and committees, volunteer networks, regular meetings between project leads, standardized training modules, shared volunteer pools, unified monitoring dashboards. This prevents silos. For example, a women's skill center in a rural village works in tandem with the village school, volunteer shared training, research cell monitors both, and life skills modules are common. Also, the underlying philosophy is integrated of inner transformation plus outer service. So, whether it is education or rural development or women's empowerment, the same human foundation approach applies. This coherence ensures synergy. A child in a school may later participate in community service. A woman trained in skills may mentor others as volunteers. Research insights from one domain feed others. In short, it's a matrix model, not a parallel silos. Now, how has the VVMVP addressed environmental sustainability and ecology in its service projects? The environmental sustainability is integral in rural development programs. The VVMVP emphasizes sustainable agriculture, rainwater harvesting, tree planting, ecological awareness. The Art of Living says larger commitment to environment. Example, the Mission Green Earth resonates here. For example, in villages served by VVMVP, we introduce permaculture workshops, the rainwater recharge systems, organize the organic farming, community gardens managed by women's groups, solar lighting in schools, the waste management initiatives. The philosophy is service must respect nature, human progress must be aligned with the ecological health. The Trust also conducts awareness programs for students and volunteers on sustainable living. Now, how do you address the challenge of measuring long term transformational impact like 10 to 20 years rather than only short term metrics? That is a subtle but important challenge. The short term metrics like attendance, enrollment, jobs are easier, but long term transformation like mindset, resilience, and service orientation is less tangible. The VVMVP uses longitudinal tracking of selected cohorts, alumni of schools, women trainees to monitor outcomes, higher education, social engagement, volunteer service, livelihood stability. We also collect narrative data, stories of lives change, community transformation, and generational effects. We emphasize qualitative research, interviews, focus groups, case studies that reflect the inner shifts. I used to be fearful. Now I mentor others, or our village used to argue. Now we sit together and plan. These narratives become our long term indicators. We aim to develop transformational indices, though they are still evolving. The trust remains committed to patience. We know service is generational work. Yeah, so how is the concept of education for all embodied in VVMVP's free school initiatives? Yeah, the education for all in VVMVP means providing high quality, value based education to children who might otherwise not access it due to poverty, remote location, social background. The Trust provides free tuition, books, uniforms, transport, meals, and barriers to entry are reduced. But beyond access, education for all also means inclusive curriculum for differently abled girls and tribal children, life skills, and emotional wellness. The aim is that no child is left behind and every child gets opportunity not just to learn but to flourish. In underserved regions, we often establish satellite schools, mobile learning units, bridging programs for dropouts. The aim is equity, dignity, and empowerment. Jagadish, so could you describe a typical day in the life of a volunteer teacher in a VVMVP free school? Now, a typical day begins early. The teacher arrives, greets students, leads a short 10-minute meditation breathing session to settle the class. Then academic lessons commence like maths, language, science. Midday, the children get free nutritious meal provided by the trust. After academic time, life skills workshops like group activity, value education talk, peer discussion. The teacher may handle mentoring, identifying children with stress, organizing volunteer tutors, facilitating community visits. At day end, reflection circle, how was the class? What could be improved? Volunteer team meets. The teacher also engages in weekend training, attend a value education module, volunteer network meets, share best practices. Many teachers also support rural project visits, women's skill center sessions, research data collection. The role is richer than academic teaching. It's about holistic development, mentoring, and service. Volunteers often say that they feel teaching and learning simultaneously. Now, how does the VVMVP ensure gender sensitivity, inclusion, and diversity in its programs? The inclusion and gender sensitivity are embedded in policy and practice. Women's skill centers are intentional. Girls' enrollment in free schools is prioritized. Adult women in villages are invited into programs. Remotely located tribal women are engaged. Curriculum includes gender respect, puberty education, leadership for girls. On the diversity front, programs serve children and communities of all castes, religions, socioeconomic backgrounds, often with the explicit aim of transcending boundaries. The Trust's ethos under Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankarji emphasizes human values beyond identity. Volunteers come from diverse backgrounds. Monitoring includes gender ratio, inclusion of marginalized groups, and ensuring no child woman feels excluded. Over time, we have seen women leaders emerge in villages where once participation was minimal. Now, how does the trust adapt to local cultural settings across different Indian states and tribal regions? The adaptation to local culture is essential when VVMVP enters a new region. Local customs, languages, and social structures are respected. Curriculum is translated. Teachers are trained to understand local ethos. Community leaders are involved from the outset. Sometimes programs are customized. For instance, in travel bells, the earlier life skills workshops may include adaptation to travel livelihood contexts. We ensure cultural sensitivity in design. Volunteer teams may include local youth. The service model is dialogical, not imposed. Local festivals, traditions become part of school life. Women's centers may cater to local craft traditions. Rural programs integrate local agricultural practices. The underlying principles remain constant, but the expression is locally rooted, which enhances relevance, respect, and sustainability. Jagdish, so what role does meditation and breathwork play in the curricula of the VVMVP schools and the projects? Like the meditation and breathwork, the core of the art of living, play an important role in schools. Short sessions of breathing exercises are scheduled daily to help children calm their minds, improve focus, reduce anxiety, increase presence. In women's centers, volunteers run pranayama meditation modules to foster resilience, clarity, stress management. In rural projects, villagers are introduced to simple practices for daily well being. The reason is clear: external service can be powerful only if the inner environment is steady. Children who practice simple meditation improve concentration. Adults who practice become more centered, better able to lead. The VVMVP recognizes that sustainable change depends on inner stability. Hence, the curriculum across domains is enriched by these wellness tools. We have observed a reduced absenteeism, less behavioral stress, and greater volunteer engagement where meditation is integrated. Yeah, so could you speak of how the VVMVP encourages leadership development among its volunteers and beneficiaries? Yeah, the leadership development is woven into the trust's journey. For volunteers, after initial training, that they may be invited to lead local projects, mentor newer volunteers, design modules. There is a pathway from participant to volunteer to coordinator to local leader to trainer. Many alumni of Art of Living become leadership facilitators in VVMVP. Among beneficiaries, children in free schools are given leadership roles, class leaders, peer mentors, and volunteer partners. Early on, women in skill centers are encouraged to form SHGs, lead enterprise groups that train others, and rural projects cultivate village youth as change agents. The idea is awakening leadership strengthens communities, ensures sustainability, builds local capacity. The trust organizes leadership camps, refresher workshops, peer learning networks for this purpose. Jagdish, so how does the VVMVP monitor volunteer burnout and ensure volunteer well-being? The volunteer well-being is essential since service without self-care can lead to burnout. VVMVP fosters this in several ways: regular debriefs and peer sharing sessions. Volunteers undergo art of living wellness programs themselves, periodic retreats and training for rejuvenation, rotation of duties. So long-term stress is avoided, the mentoring support is provided. We also monitor indicators such as volunteer dropout, attendance, feedback on workload, sense of fulfillment. When we see distress or overload, volunteers are invited to inner growth workshops, rest periods, or shifted to a different role. The trust emphasizes that service begins with self care. You cannot give what you don't have. This philosophy is championed by Gurudev and it guides our operational norms. Now, in your view, how does the trust's work reflect the teaching being in the present moment that Gurudev emphasizes? The Gurudev emphasizes whenever you are in love and feel joyous, your mind is in the present. That is when you achieve yoga. The art of living lies in being in the present moment. In service work of VVMVP, we see this lived. The volunteers fully engaged with children or communities, not distressed, distracted. Service becomes not a hectic project but a conscious act. Children learn presence through daily sessions. Communities build resilience by being present to their issues rather than reactive. Practically, this means training volunteers not just in task but in presence, listening deeply to children, responding without stress, and being aware of their own state. When service is delivered from a centered space, the quality improves. In our rural programs, the mindset shift from we must do many tasks to we must engage deeply has led to deeper connection, fewer superficial interventions, and greater community trust. The present moment orientation becomes implicit in all operations. Now, how does the VVMVP balance tradition, the Vedic wisdom, and modernity of education, digital research? The balancing tradition and modernity is a constant endeavor. On the one hand, VVMVP draws from ancient Vedic wisdom, meditation, breathwork, life skills rooted in Indian tradition. On the other hand, it uses modern pedagogies, digital tools, research methods, and evidence-based program design. The operational balancing is done by curriculum design and staff training. For example, in schools, training learn Tamil, English, maths, modern, and also attend value education modules with Upanishadic stories or traditional. In research cells, we might study Vedic concepts of mind alongside modern neuroscience. In rural programs, we combine organic farming traditional with data monitoring and analytics of modern. The key is integration, not compromise. The tradition enriches, the modern scales validates. Now, how has the trust incorporated feedback, learning, and continuous improvement into its program? The continuous improvement is built into the trust systems. Every project has periodic review meetings, volunteer feedback forms, beneficiary interviews, impact data. We track what works, what doesn't, and adapt accordingly. Best practices documented and shared across centers. When a school approach works in one state, we adapt and replicate in another. When challenges arise, the teacher turnover, absenteeism, the funding, the shortfall, we hold strategy sessions, revise training, and adjust timelines. The Trust also organizes leadership workshops where local center leaders come together for peer learning, exchange of ideas, innovation labs. Research cells compile case studies, lessons learned, and feed these into annual training. Volunteers are encouraged to suggest enhancements. This openness to feedback ensures that VVMVP remains dynamic, not static. Now, how can that's like, can you share some anecdotes or volunteer student or rural community transformation that deeply moved you? I remember a young teacher volunteer who came from a corporate background. She joined the Art of Living Happiness program, then volunteered at a VVMVP rural school. After several months, she shared, I thought I would teach English and maths, but what moved me most was a child who came to class silent, scared, with no hope. After 6 months of life skills and mentoring, he stood up and led the morning assembly. That moment captured for me the power of service plus presence. In a tribal village project, we had introduced a women's craft center. One older woman, illiterate and shy, started attending sessions. Gradually, she learned tailoring, set up a small business, started mentoring younger girls, and eventually became the village's nominated liaison person for VVMVP's other programs. When we asked what changed, she said, I learned I have the power to help others. I don't need to wait for someone to help me. Such stories remind us why the trust exists. So, how do you handle risks such as volunteer attrition, funding volatility, regulatory changes, or community resistance? Yeah, the risks are part of the terrain. For volunteer attrition, we build strong induction, peer support, mentorship, and clear progression paths so volunteers feel engaged and valued. For funding volatility, we diversify funding streams, donations, CSR, free courses, and partnerships, and maintain reserves. For regulatory changes, we maintain good governance, audit compliance, liaison with authorities, local partnerships. For community resistance, we prioritize listening, build trust, and pilot small programs, respect culture, involve local leadership. The trust emphasizes proactive risk management, regular situation analysis, contingency plans, and training for crisis leadership. Importantly, because our culture emphasizes service as practice, many volunteers stay long term despite their risks. For instance, in remote villages where infrastructure is weak, we prioritize sustainability models from the start so community ownership reduces attrition risk. Devdas, what message would you like to convey to young people today about joining service via the VVMVP and the Art of Living? Yeah, that to young people, if you feel a call to contribute, join service not as a chore but as an opportunity for inner growth and outer transformation. Service will challenge you, stretch you, but it will also awaken you. Through VVMVP, you will learn skills, develop leadership, and discover purpose. The world needs engaged hearts and clear minds. I would add service is not separate from your own life journey. It's your life journey. Under the guidance of Gurudev, we say, be the change you want to see. If you join the VVMP, you will contribute to education, rural welfare, women's empowerment, and in doing so, transform yourself. You will gain community, mentorship, tools, and but ultimately, you will be part of something larger than yourself. That is the invitation. Now, how has the trust taken into account the international expansion of the Art of Living movement, and are there global linkages for VVMVP? Yes, Jagadev, true VVMVP, though VVMVP is India based, The Art of Doing movement is global, operating in 150 plus countries. The VVMVP's models of service, education, leadership, and integration of wisdom have inspired sister projects internationally. We share training modules, volunteer networks, research outputs with global centers. Some international alumni contribute to Indian projects. Indian service models are piloted abroad and in adapted form. The Trust is exploring direct global collaborations, exchange programs, research partnerships with international universities, and service projects in areas of extreme need overseas. The idea is the model developed in India can serve as a replicable template globally. Thus, VVMVP's work is not just national service but a contribution to a global service movement aligned with the Art of Living's vision of a stress free and violence free world. Jagda, so finally, what is a deeper wisdom or essence you would like leaders to take away about VVMVP and its journey? The deeper wisdom is that true transformation is holistic. Inner clarity, outer service, and community upliftment are inseparable. The VVMVP's journey teaches that when individuals awaken to their inner selves, they naturally step into service. When service is infused with mindfulness, it becomes sustainable, joyful, and impactful. The trust's work across decades reminds us that real change happens over time, remains rooted in values, and requires both compassion and competence. I would add, Gurudev's is teaching that being in the present moment opens the door to purpose and fulfillment, applies not only to individuals but to organizations. When we are present, service becomes not duty but a celebration. The VVMVP is more than a trust, it is an expression of that joy in service. We hope, and my hope is that anyone reading this will see you are invited to service not from obligation but from the heart, and you will discover growth, connection, and meaning along the way. Jagdev.